Hi everyone, and welcome to the continuation of Series 2. We're going to show you some more dialogues that you can create with the dialogue editor and show you a couple more controls. So I'll quickly go through the agenda. We'll show you a grouping variable control, a list box and master list box control. We'll show you mathematical operators that you can use for formulae. So this is another control, and we'll end with showing you how you can create dialogues with sub-dialogues. So we're going to start off with the grouping variable control, and the grouping variable control that I've shown here is used in the independent sample t-test, and this grouping variable is used to capture a single factor variable that defines the group being compared against. You can also use a grouping variable as a substitute for any destination variable list where there can be only a single entry in the destination. So simple example of this is GLM or linear model. You have a single dependent variable, and although it doesn't fit in with the traditional use of a grouping variable, since a grouping variable contains one and only one variable, you cannot add more variables to it. You can use a grouping variable to capture the dependent variable in any regression or linear model. So again, the grouping variable is very similar to a destination variable list control. It's just that you don't have the attribute maximum number of variables. You don't see it because we implicitly set that to 1, and you cannot drag and drop or have more than one variable in that control. So we'll move on to the demo, and here in the dialog editor application, I have the independent sample t-test. I'll preview it so you can take a look. So basically, here's the dialog. I can analyze a scale variable. I want to group it by var1. You see I can only drag one. If I try and drag another variable, it replaces it. There's only one there. I can even drag and drop. It'll replace it. You cannot have more than one variable there. So that's the idea of a grouping variable, a single variable. Let me go ahead and delete it and create it again, just so that you can see. So the grouping variable can be found here with the name grouping variable. I click on it. I give it a name because every control needs to have a unique name. I'll call it grouping variable. Can execute will be set to false because the first time the dialog comes up, no one would have selected a grouping variable, and since it's empty, I don't want the OK button disabled until someone enters a valid value in the grouping variable control. So I want it initially set to false. I want it enabled. Obviously, I'm not really worried about the width and height. I can adjust that with my mouse and make it look perfect. Substitute settings, I'll keep the defaults. I don't want to prefix it, the variable dragged and dropped to the grouping variable by anything. I don't want to use the format dataset $variable name. I don't need to enclose the variable by quotes in this command syntax, and don't have to worry about the separator settings as well. So I'm going to cancel this. I do want to filter. I want to filter and not have any scale variables appear in this control. So I cannot drag and drop or move any scale variables into the control. I'm not really interested in date as well. Now I can also choose to say that you can only enter nominal variables with 2 levels or 3 levels, whatever I specify. I'm not really interested in that, but there will be analytical commands or statistical commands you write where you want to make sure that user can only drag and drop or group by nominal variables with 2 levels, and you can do that here as well. So I'll define some rules. So I want to say that if there's nothing in this control, so item counts, item count basically tells you how many items are in this control, and if there's nothing in this control, I want to set can execute to false. I don't want the OK button disabled. If it's empty, I want to force someone to put in a grouping variable. So okay, so we're gonna set the can execute property of this control to false, and that is if item counts on this at the item count attribute on this control is 0, we set can execute to false so that no one can click the OK button. And obviously if someone drags and drops a valid value, item count will be greater than 0 or equal to 1 since it's a group box. So I used a capital I. And you've got to remember that these names are case sensitive, so you're going to have to use your capitals properly. You know, it will, if you're, it is case sensitive, as I just said. And property name true. All right, and that should do it. If I save this and I preview it, the OK button is disabled. I select a grouping variable, it's still disabled. I select a scale variable to analyze, and the OK button becomes enabled. Again, if I attempt to drag and drop another variable into the grouping variable, it gets replaced. The original variable gets moved out, and the new variable gets moved in. Okay, so that's the main advantage of the grouping variable. So with that, I will move on and talk about the list box control. So the list box control allows a user to select one or more pre-configured values, and obviously those values would be substituted in the syntax of the R command that gets created. But the goal is to just allow you to select one or more pre-configured values. So let's show you what that looks like. Again, pretty simple. We'll create a new list box control, but I'll first show you a list box control in action. And here you have a list box control. It has a set of values. We will preview it, and here I can select the values. Okay, so it's pretty straightforward. Just for your benefit, I'll create a new list box control. I will call it let's give it a unique name of test123. I want multi-select. Just basically tells you how many entries in this list box control can you select, and I'll say multi-select is false, so I'm forced into picking up one item in this list box control. I'll give it some values. List box entries basically has all the values that you want displayed. I'll call it ABC. I'll call it and hit enter to enter the next value. So I've entered a value, I hit enter, and I can enter the next value. All right, so the enter key allows me to enter the next row, and I said can execute to 3. Selected item counts tells me how many items are selected here. There's one item selected by default. Enabled is true. I'm not really worried about the width, height, left and top. That just I can use my mouse to size it appropriately, or I can enter width or height, no problem. Just for you to see, I can enter. If I want it a little wider, I can make it 82 pixels wider, and that takes into effect as soon as I click enter. With regards to substitute settings, since I have only one value, use comma is fine. This is a single select, so there'll only be multi-select is false, hence I'll only have one item selected, and hence I don't need to worry about substituting multiple items. And again, you have the ability to use comma, use a plus, and enclose the items in by single quote if you want. So you have some rich options there. And yeah, that's about it. We can go and preview it, and there you see you have your control. You can select it and do whatever you need. You can define rules, so you can say if if item uh, is if no items are selected or selected items is equal to 0, you can disable the OK button if you so choose to do so. All right, so that's it. I just deleted it because I don't want it to interfere with my existing dialog. And one important thing I wanted to let you know is as soon as you click on a control, you'll see some helpful text here, the type. Okay, it just tells you when you click on this control, when you click on the type attribute of any control, you'll get a helpful hint below that tells you a little bit more about the control. All right, so this entire bottom right hand section, on clicking on any attribute, if there's help that's available, you can learn more about it. So it's really useful. I'm going to click on model name, I'll click on type, you'll see the type of control, it's a text box control, you get some help on it. You click on attribute, you get some more help on this attribute, so you understand exactly what you're doing. So one thing is, now I've got enable selected and I click on another control, you see enable is still selected. So just click on type if you want to go to the top. Okay, so we persist the selection you've made. Even though you click on another control, we'll keep height selected, but you can click on type and get to any control you want. Obviously, we just persist the selection across controls. Okay, so yeah, that's it with the list box control. Let's go and talk about a master list box control. So now master list box control allows you to set up a list box with items which, when selected, okay, populate another list box with predefined values. Okay, it's very easy to demo. I'll show you in the application here. If I want to do a GLM analysis and I want to know, let's say my weight after the treatment is my dependent variable. I want my pre-weight to be one of the independent variables, and I want treatment as well, and I want to choose a family of Gaussian. You see, as soon as I choose Gaussian, my linked functions available to me narrow. If I choose binomial, I get a different set of linked functions. So basically, this is the master list box. Family is the master list box, and you're controlling what gets displayed in the slave list box. Link function is the slave list box based on what is selected in the master list box. Okay, so it's pretty straightforward. Master list box, slave list box. You select on something in the master, automatically the options that are displayed in the slave list box are constrained based on what you have selected in the master. Okay, so you can run the GLM analysis. I'm not going to run that analysis, but basically what I'm going to do is take you to the dialog editor application and set one up for you. I'm just going to delete these, and recreate it for you. So I click on the master list box control, master list box. So you see my mouse over it. I drag it down. I give it a name of family. Every control needs to have a unique name. I'll give it a slave list box name after I enter the slave list box name, but I'll go ahead and give it a couple of entries. Okay, so the entries, I'll give it Gaussian. Another one I'll give it as binomial, and another one that I'll give it as Poisson. All right, and now I will create the slave list box. So I'll click on list box. The slave list box is just the standard list box. Okay, now the standard list box or the entries within the standard list box can be driven based on what's selected in a master list box or you can create a list box that's independent of any master list box. Okay, so you can have a plain list box, or you can have the same plain list box that's driven by another master list box. So let's give it a unique name. We'll give it a name of link function. All right, we'll say multi-select is false. We'll give it some list box entries. Let's give it entries of identity, an entry of inverse, and an entry of log. All right. And now what we're going to do is go back to the master list box and wire the master list box to the slave list box. So we'll give it a slave list box name. Now this property, if it's populated, will automatically wire the master to the slave. Okay, so we'll call it link function. So that's what links it. And we've already given the master list box entries, so they're very much there. But now we will map the master list box entries to the entries on the slave. All right, so here I click my mouse, I have to click twice, and I select a master list box entry. So if Gaussian is selected, I want the slave value identity. I click enter, and I click binomial, and here I click inverse, and here I will click Gaussian again, and I will click log. All right, so that more or less covers it. You can add rules, the substitute settings, since there's only one selected, use commas fine. You typically wouldn't be concerned with the syntax property on the list box and the destination and the source variable list, because the default value of %% value automatically substitutes the values that are selected. And that's the purpose. You want the values in the list box to be passed, and that's exactly what we do when the syntax is set to the default value of %% value. That means we're passing the values within the control. And I think that's pretty much it. So we'll go and preview. Let's go and save this, and we will preview it. And there you see, I see my list box appropriately wired. Okay, and with Poisson there's nothing available. Okay, so with that, I think we have covered master list box. And I talked about this with a master list box control. You have the value that you select in the master drives the selections in the slave. We looked at that. And now let's move on to the mathematical operators for formula control. So this control basically gives the user a set of predefined symbols to construct a formula, and the symbols you clicked on are just appended to a text box control. All right, so basically here is the list of symbols control, and as soon as I click on this, the value or the symbol I clicked on gets added to the text box control. So at the end of the day, it just makes it easy for your user to enter a formula. They click the plus, then they drag and drop another variable, and I'll demo it for you in a second. So again, let's go back to the application and bring up the GLM dialog. And let me just delete everything here. So the first thing I'll do is I'll select one of my independent variables. Let's call it preweight, and then I'll click the plus sign. You see the plus sign gets added to the text box. Then I'll click the treatment, and then I can click a plus sign and type in something here, and but you get the point. And I close the bracket by clicking the symbols. So that's it in a nutshell. It's a really nice control, and let's go ahead and I'll just delete it and then add it back again. That's the text box. And so the first thing you typically do is you click on the mathematical operators for formulae, and you drag and drop it to where you want to. The expression is just a group box, okay? Just a simple, why don't I show you that as well? It's very simple. So here's my list of symbols, and if I want to create a group box, I click on group box. There you go. And I drag it and drop it here. I size it. Okay, I give the group box the name. Let me just give it a unique name. You can give a group box any name because it never generates any parameters for syntax. Radio group box is a little different. So I'll give the mathematical operator control name of symbols. Now we don't have a text box yet, so I'll leave that blank. And then let me go ahead and add the text box control. All right, and here's the text box control. Make it a little bigger so it's the same length as the formulae control. And I will give it a name of, let's call it independent variables, INDP. All right. And now what I'll do is I'll go back to my formulae and I will set the name here. So this connects my mathematical operator control to the list box. Okay, so I set the name of the text box to the name of the text box I want it wired to. And that's pretty much it. Unable to associate the move. Oh, okay. So you got to remember that now I want my move button to move things to independent vars, and that seems to be okay. INDEP vars. Okay. Hopefully that does it. Yep, that does it. I just needed to enter that name again, and I will save it. Unable to associate the move button with the proper target variable list control. Targets must be of type. Okay, so I've got a small bug here, but you get the point. I will definitely address this, but that's how it works, and you can see the dialog working perfectly well here in the test. Where is it? Analysis, model fitting, GLM, and you see how the formulae, the symbol that I click on gets added into the text box below. All right, so now I want to go back to the PowerPoint and talk about the last capability, and that is creating sub-dialogues. All right, so I'm going to go back into the Dialog Designer application and quickly show you what is a sub-dialog. Really quickly, we'll go under means, and here you see independent samples t-test. Sorry, that was not the one I was looking for. Means do a there we go. All right, and this is a dialog, and now I can click on a button and I see a sub dialog. So that's what I'm going to show you to create in the dialog editor application. So really quickly, it's pretty simple. All you do is you add a button. Okay, and once you add a button, and I'll show you this in detail, you have the ability to click within the sub dialog and just click that. And once you do that, you see the sub dialog. All right, so let's go ahead and create another one. I'll click on button, and the button control gets dropped on my canvas. I give it a name. I'll call it BTN2, and I will give it some text. Let's call it test. All right, and here you see this button's dropped, and now I click on the sub dialog, and when I click on the sub dialog, I have the ability to define a brand new subdialog. So I can give it a multi-line control. All right, and here I can size it. I can keep typing in here. All right, and here's my multi-line text box control. I can give it a checkbox, just call it, give it a name of CHK1, and is selected is true, and give it a text of testing. All right, so I have the ability to lay out the subdialog as I choose to. I can give it a title called Advanced Options, let's say. All right, and give it a help file. Every subdialog can have its own help file. I can adjust its height, and whenever I say no entries required, these are, you shouldn't enter any values for these properties. And that's it. I can come here and save it. Okay, and then it is automatically available. So let me go ahead and preview this. Okay, oh, we have to enter a name property. Let me go back to the subdialog and give it a name. That's the message we got. Got to give it a unique name. Let's make sure that this has a unique name. Yes, it does. I save and close, and now I can preview it. Here's my dialog. I click on test, and I see my subdialog. All right, so pretty simple, guys. There's some really powerful capabilities you can build. And here's a quick screenshot of how the subdialog works. It's pretty straightforward. I showed you the demo, and let's just sum up what we did. We discussed, we didn't discuss. We discussed some rules, but we basically focused on the grouping variable control, the list box and the master list box control, the mathematical operators for formulaic control, as well as creating dialogs with subdialogs. The dialog for GLM is available in the sample dialogs directory. You can find it very easily. Look at it. There are tons of dialogs available in sample dialogs. So all of these are the real production dialogs in the application, but we've left them there so you can see how they're built and learn from it and modify it if you choose to do it, and you can overwrite the existing dialogs. And we encourage you to review the other videos on creating a reusable dialog for an R data manipulation command. We'll create a reusable dialog with graphical output. We'll create a command without a dialog with tabular output, and we'll create a reusable dialog with tabular output and graphical output. So happy to take any questions. Email support at bskystatistics.com, and that's support@blueskystatistics.com with any questions and comments. We thank you very much for attending. Goodbye.